So in part one of the damage tutorial, what we did was we applied damage to the main character. We made sure that he could take damage. And then on the mine, we made sure that we had at least one character that could cause damage, so then that way we could prove that the main character was actually receiving and taking the damage the way the way it was supposed to. So now that we have the mine working, we want to make sure that we can get the zombie, the shooting turret, and the M missile or the homing missile all doing the same thing, right? So to do this, let's go ahead and clear our work area, and let's start with the H missile, since that's usually that was the second one that we created. So essentially, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the code that we wrote for the S missile. We'll have to play with the variable because that seems to always mess up when we make a copy of it. So we'll make a unique variable to make sure that we get rid of the sprite when it's done. But essentially with this, we should just be able to copy and paste and then check to see what our collision components are for each one of these items. And then with that, we should be okay. So I'm going to go to S mine, and I'm going to double click and open up its code, and I'm going to grab all the code that we just created in the last project. So what we did for the S mine, right? So I'm going to clean this up just a little bit so it'll be easier to click and drag out. Let me just grab that. Okay, good. And we'll just push that a little bit back. Okay, so remember that the bottom code here was for when the whenever it was shot with the projectile, and the one at the top was when we were going to run into it, right? So in both cases, we have it creating spawns, getting rid of the spawns when they're done, getting rid of the components, getting rid of the components, with the obviously with the collision creating the damage. So let's go ahead and select all of this and hit Control C from our keyboard to copy. And we're gonna go minus that or make it small, and let's go back to Evil Cubes and go to H missile and double click into its AI, or I'm sorry, blueprint. And somewhere up there, remember that it's the deep, how thick it was. So we want to make sure that whenever we paste, that we paste up high enough. So I'm going to hit Control V, and now we have that code in here. So there are a couple of things that we want to check. The first thing is that we don't have a box collision, so this is going to have to be removed, and that's actually why it's looking the way it does right there. Here we do not have the box collision. So we'll make sure that we add that to it once we add the box collision to the H missile. So again, since this is happening on the collision, what we want to do is add component, go to type in box collision. Okay, so once we have the box collision there, we can click on box collision. We can go into the viewport. And what we want to do is make sure that this box collision is actually large enough to be able to sit around the outside of this box. You could go over, or you can click on the box collision and then scroll up and then see underneath scale, do 2 times 2 times 2, and that will make a box large enough to be able to fit around the outside of that. Now from there, the other thing that you want to do is look at the box collision settings. So underneath the box's collision settings, they should look like this. It should be, it should be no generate hit, because we don't want it to generate any hits. We do want it to be on the overlap. We do want it to be yes for people to be able to walk on it, or the character to be able to walk on it. Custom, query and physics. This is going to be on dynamic. And then all of these are going to be on overlap with this on the projectile. What that means is that we're going to allow the projectile to come through and actually hit the box, which is going to generate the hit command. And from there, the collision box will overlap with any other collision. So when it runs into anything else, it will also explode. like a missile does. If it runs into whatever it runs into, its job is to hit something and explode. So we're doing it the right way there. From there, we'll check the cube's collision settings, and we do want the cube to generate a hit because we are going to want that to generate our hit command. We do not want to generate any overlap commands. It's all right if the character walks on this. We want to set this to custom query and physics are correct. And let's make this world static and then make sure that everything is on block. So if we do that and we hit compile and before we go, last thing, let's go back to the event graph and two more things actually. The first thing is this. This is still the way we set this up originally. We set this up with a overlap. So I actually want to get rid of that overlap, and what I want to do is right click and type in event. So you're going to and it's going to be a hit cube. So let's delete. Okay, so what you'll want to do is come over here to the cube, right click, select the cube, right click here, add event on cube, collision, and we want this to be a hit. Okay. So once that's there, we'll reconnect it to the sequence that it was. Again, we're doing this, and that way this is the code that does the overlap, and this is the code that does the cube. From there, the other thing we want to make sure that we do is that we redo our variable. Remember that when we copy and paste this over, it doesn't like the variable not being there. So let's go ahead and pull off of there and type in promote to a variable. Let's click on it and give it a unique name. So I'm going to call mine Expo 24. And with that still selected, I'm going to type in on end play. That should then give me a on end play event. And I will then be able to destroy the actor from here. So let's type in destroy actor. So now that we have this being destroyed, let's check and make sure that both of these boxes are actually coming from here. So just for fun, I'm going to delete those and drag these back in one at a time. So let's make sure that that's connected. Let's go to box and also make sure that that's connected. Okay. So with that, we also want to make sure that this one, which has got the hit now, is also destroying both of its components. So let's make sure that this is gone, and let's just play doubly sure that these are connected to the right components here. So let's hit drag out for that for the cube and drag out for the box. Once those things are done, we should be ready. So just to recap what we did, right? We copied and pasted this in here, so basically everything stayed the same. The only thing we needed to do was change this the variable on the back by creating a new variable, giving a unique name, and making sure that we destroy the actor. The next thing that we did was we created a box collision. We made sure that the box collision was actually large enough to be able to fit around the outside of the box. And then we made sure that we set the collision settings for the box and for the cubes the same as what we did for the S mine. Once we had that there, what we did was we went to where we have the destroy component, and we made sure that both of these, that there were no extra things up here that weren't being destroyed when we ran into them. And then also down here at the bottom, that to make sure that when we ran into them, that these items would also be destroyed. Last but not least, the way that we had written the code earlier, we had written this as an apply damage, or I'm sorry, as an overlap, and we deleted this and made sure that this was actually coming as a cube component hit. So with all that done, we should be able to hit save and play. And let's go and test this real quick. So let's hit, that does explode. Let's walk over it, and that hits us, and that may be done. Okay, so fantastic. So now the H missile is working, and let's move from the H missile over to the zombie. So let's go to evil cubes. Let's go to zombie. Let's double click on it. Okay, so on this one, we're actually 90% of the way there. We've already got the pawn moved to. We've got the information for the cube projectile hit, so when the cube itself gets hit. The only thing that's different here is that we don't have this applying any damage right now. So when the zombie runs into us, obviously he's not applying any damage. Now, I want you to look at the code up here and the code down here. Essentially, that's the same code. This is much more difficult to read than the one down here at the bottom, so I'm going to spend again a couple of seconds just cleaning up this code, so then that way it looks very streamlined like the one down here does. Okay, that looks so much easier to read. Now I can see that this is a begin on the component overlap on the cube. We're having it do a sequence. I see that the first node is coming out this way. It's generating the spawn. This is where it's getting information from. This is the death or the destruction of the explosion, the actor that's associated with that pawn. And from there, once that's completed, it's going to come out here and destroy the component. Now, the only thing that we need to add to this piece of code is that we need to add the damage effects, right? So the damage effects have to happen between it being turned into the spawning of the actor and when the component gets hit. So we wanted to overlap, sequence, damage, then do the sprite, then destroy itself. So now I can just very easily grab this piece of the code, drag it off to the side, so then that way I have a little bit more space in between. Click here, drag off, and type in apply damage. Okay. So there's the apply damage. And remember that on the apply damage that we have to get the information for the actor, right? So we have to apply the damage to the actor. So let's type in get player controller. And let me make just a little bit more space. Let's actually do this. Okay. So now we can grab that, move it over. That stays nice and neat. And if I even wanted to do that a little bit better, we can do something like this. Okay, so now we have the damage. Of course, we need to make sure that, okay, so we apply the damage to the character, and then we want to make sure that this actually wields some damage. So I'm going to put 10% because that's enough to be able to see the bar move. Now, with this one, we're not using a collision box. A lot of you might be looking at this and going, well, Martin, where's the collision box? Well, we're actually using the component on the cube to create the collision. So you could, if you wanted to, put a box collision on this and actually make the character run into the box collision. But in this case, we're just going to attach it to the cube. And that's another way that we can do it. So with this one, the code, we need to now check the, let me go ahead and just put this in the little comments section box. And we'll say that the comment on this is cube collision apply damage. All right. Okay, so now we have some very nice looking code. We can see exactly what that code's doing. And now what we need to do is check our collision settings for both our capsule and for our cube. So on the capsule, what we need this to be is it does generate a hit. So then that way we do get the projectile to get us to create the explosion. We also do want this to generate overlap events. From there, we don't want the first person character to step on this. We do need a custom collision. We do need the quarry and the physics turned on. We're going to set this to pawn. We're going to have this, the first four options are going to be blocked all the way through to world dynamic. Then we're going to have ignore on everything except for the projectile. So then that way we, so what's creating the hit component is going to be this, it running into our capsule component. Now from there, let's look at the cube. And the cube now is going to be like the cube was on all the other ones, right? So it is going to generate a hit. It is also going to generate overlap events. Yes, we want the character to be able to step on it, so that way it explodes. We want it to be a custom preset. We're going to pick query and physics. We want the world to be static, and we want this blocked all the way down. Now, with all those things there, we should be ready. This should be working code. So let's go ahead and hit compile and save. And let's minimize this box. If you don't already have zombies on your screen, go ahead and put a couple there. And what I have done is I have one facing towards me, so then that way when I walk onto the platform, I can see this is the one that I'm going to have collide with, so I can test the collisions condition. And then with the back one over here, I actually have it facing away from me, so then this will be the one that I shoot. Okay, so let's go ahead and test this out, and we shoot that one and it explodes. And let's walk onto the stage, stop, and that explodes. I also want to test to make sure that I don't have any remnants of anything left on the screen. And let's go do the same thing in the area where the other zombie would have been. So at this point, I have nothing left on the zombies. They are both working, and there's nothing left on the screen there. So now let's go and check the last one of these, which is going to be our shooting turret. So let's go ahead and go into shooting turret. And remember that with the shooting turret, well, let's go ahead and delete these off the screen, so then that way we can put a shooting turret and the shooting turret. And with this one, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to have one facing me, and I'm going to have the other one facing away from me. So one will start shooting at me, and the other one I can check to make sure that I can run into it without it being exploded by one of its own projectiles or something like that. So with those two out there, let's go and check the code, and let's go into the shooting turret, and let's see what we have. Okay, so we have all the code for the shooting turret. We have the same identical code, the running into the component, it being hit by a projectile. Now, at this point, we have not added damage to us running into the component. So if we wanted to, we could do that. It would look very similar to what we did just now for the zombie. And here we have what it's seeing and the projectile spawning. Okay, so let's do that to the overlap. Let's go ahead and clean this up real quick. Okay, so now we can put the damage here. So again, this is on the overlap, not on the hit, right? So we don't want it to, when we hit it, for it to cause damage to ourselves. So let's click off of this. Let's type in apply damage. And again, I need to move this guy's back just a little bit. There we go. And from here, again, remember that we need to apply an actor for the damage to be applied to. So get player character. And again, we're going to move these, we're going to move these guys back so we can have a little bit more room. All right. And let's put these all in line. Okay, so now we have the component being hit, or us colliding into the component. The component, and then we'll do one of two things. It will apply damage. We have not put the damage amount, so again, I'm going to put 10 just because we can see it on the bar easily. And then I'm going to apply that damage to the player character. And then once that damage is applied, I want the pawn itself to turn into an explosion, and from there destroy itself. So then that way there are no pieces of this left. The other thing we want possibly to do with this too is to make sure that we don't have any leftover pieces with this. So hopefully this will work. If not, we'll come back and we'll add some things to this destroy column and make sure that everything actually gets destroyed in both cases. So let's go ahead and hit compile and save, and let's see if this now causes damage to our character. So before we leave here, we actually want to make two things. We want to check our projectile or our collision settings, and then we also want to make sure that we destroy everything off of the stage, so that we don't have anything left inside the game. So in order to do that with the begin on overlap, we want to make sure that we grab everything and make a list of it here. So we already have the cube, so let's grab the component capsule. Let's add that. Okay. And when I mean everything, I mean everything. I want to make sure that there is nothing left that can cause damage. So the arrow lets us go. I'll start another row over here because I also don't want this thing to look like a giant octopus. I want it to be able to see what's going on. And okay, so that's a little easier to see and we can see what's going on there. Now, we've done this to the overlap, but we also want to make sure that we do this to the code down here. Otherwise, when we hit it with the projectile, we will also need to be able to get rid of all of these because this condition is only happening when we overlap. This condition we need to happen when we make the destroy. So again, I'm just going to spend half a second here and clean up my code just a little bit so it's a little easier to see what's going on. Okay, we also don't need like 2 of those boxes. We'll just attach everything to one. And I'm actually deleting that one because I'm just going to copy everything from here and just reattach it. So I'm going to grab all the ones that are part of the destroy component up there, hit Control C, come down here and hit Control V, and let's grab all of those and move them. And let's go ahead and reattach these now. Okay, and that's my dog having a nightmare. Or dreaming. Toby, wake up. Hey. Shh. Hey. 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 Okay, he's awake. He's not having a nightmare anymore. All right, so now we have both pieces of the code ready. We have the overlap with everything being destroyed once the sprite happens, with it applying the damage. And we have the same thing happening with the other piece with the hit, right? So on the hit, it's going to explode. It's not going to cause damage to us. And then we're going to make sure that we destroy everything that's there. So let's hit compile. And oh, okay, so it doesn't want the arrow, so let's get rid of that and possibly get rid of this one too. So we also, in all fairness, had a little warning that was there. So let's try to hit compile now. Okay, everything checks out. Now before we leave this page, let's go ahead and make sure that we have our capsule and cube collision settings correct. So let's click on capsule. Let's scroll down to its physics and let's make sure that we have this correct. So with the capsule, we don't want it to generate a hit. We do want it to generate an overlap. We don't want the pawn. We want custom. And let's have it on collision, quarry, and physics. Let's have it as a pawn. And let's scroll all the way down and make sure that everything is on block. And then from there, let's do the cube. So let's go over to the cube and let's check its collision settings. So it should generate a hit. It should also generate an overlap. And then from there, we'll check everything in the blocked category for the cube with custom collision settings and world statistics. So fingers crossed and everything should work. Okay, so let's go to the ball and let's close this one out. Let's go to the turret projectile. Let's click on that. And if this opens up like this, that just means that you don't have anything written in the code. So what you need to do is click on Open Full Blueprint Editor up here in the top in the middle, and then you will get the Blueprint Editor, which is where we need to apply the damage. Now, we don't actually need any of those events, so we can just select and delete those. Let's right click and type in event hit, since we want to create the hit, since that's what's creating our damage. So from there, we need to apply damage whenever one of these things hits something. So let's apply damage. We need this to go back to the first person character. So let's grab damage actor and type in get player. Whoops, I don't want get player manager. I want the other one. Get player character. Get player character. There we go. You do it slowly, click on the right thing. Okay, so we'll push that right there. Now, again, remember, this thing's shooting lots of projectiles at us. It's not like a one projectile and then it waits a bit. So because it's a stream of projectiles, at this point, what I would do is keep the damage really low. So you can keep it to half points, you can keep it to full points, maybe as much as 5. But at 5, you can only be hit, if you got it 100, probably, what is that? Probably about 20 times before you're gone. So, you know, as far as the game is concerned, just figure out where you want to be with the damage on this. I'm going to put the damage low. I'm going to leave it at 1, and then we'll be able to see that I'll be losing energy. My health bar will be going down. From here, just like everything else, we need to destroy any of the components that happened when this was created. So let's go in and type in destroy components. So destroy, there they are. And I'm going to make sure that I do all 3. So I'm just going to select the first one, and let's grab this, move it down, and make our code look nice and neat. Okay, so the other things that I have over here is the component which we got. So let's grab the sphere and add that. So all I did was click and drag. I'm going to attach that to the target. And then let's also see what else we can drag. Let's see if it lets us do the projectile inherit. And let's see if it lets us destroy that as well. Yes. Okay, so just make sure that any components of the ball are going to be destroyed once the ball hit us. Now, the reason we want to do this is theoretically we could have the ball hit us and then bounce off. But if it does that, we could end up bouncing back into the ball again, which means that what? We would get hit twice by the same projectile. No, so I don't want that to happen. So in this case, we're going to destroy everything. So then that way, when the ball hits us, it destroys itself. So let's go ahead and hit compile and save. And oh, before we go anywhere, let's make sure that we have our collision settings set correctly. So there are 2 things that can take a collision setting. First would be the collision component. So if we scroll down and we look at the collision component, let's make sure that we have this set up correctly. So let's look at, we want it to, okay, so in this case, we're not having it generate a hit. We're actually allowing the sphere to generate the hit. I don't think that matters because we're not doing much with the collision. So all we want to do here is make sure that we have it, yes, custom, query, no physics, the projectile on, since it is a projectile, the object type, it is a projectile. And then from there, we want to make sure that we have the 2 trace responses on block, and the object responses as the first 2 checked, this one on pawn, and these 4 on block. With that, we should be okay for the collision. Let's look at the sphere. This is where actually everything is happening. So on the sphere collision, we should have doesn't generate a hit, generates an overlap. Yes, no collision. We want, I'm sorry, this needs to be set to custom. And this is going to then be set to collision. Yes, we do want so we want collision enabled. We want this to be object type pawn. And let's make sure that everything except for the pawn is set up to the block category. Okay, so let's hit compile and save and close this box, and let's go in for a check. We should have our 2 on the floor. I have both of them turned around for some reason, so let's destroy 1, and let's walk over the area where the turret was, and we see that we are not generating any additional health losses. So this is good. And let's test our collision. So we did lose when we originally collided with it, and at this point we are now no longer taking damage. And let's do this one more time, and let's see what happens with the projectiles themselves. So I'm going to come across this way. They should both start shooting at me. I'm going to destroy the one, destroy the other, and I'm going to walk around where some of those projectiles might have shown up, especially like around in this area, and double check and make sure that I'm not picking up any additional damage. Okay, so knowing that we're not picking up any additional damage, we have done this correctly, and we are now finished with adding damage to all of our enemies. So we've done damage for the mine, we've done damage for the homing missile, the zombie, and the shooting turret. We've made sure that the shooting turret on the projectile actually does generate damage, and we've made sure that we don't have any sprites or any remnants of either characters or pawns that are left over on the stage. So this is good. That means that we now have a functioning health bar damage system that should be free of bugs. So what we'll do with the next tutorial, now that we have the health bar and damage working, we will create levels, and inside those levels we will show you how to move from level to level, and also how to respawn at your starting location when you run out of health. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and have a wonderful day.